Hi, I'm Sanaya,
And I'm Ketki.
and we're Thinking People. Today, we're thinking about AI at work and in life, how it's evolved, how we're actually using it day to day, and what it's quietly doing to the way we think and behave.
Life moves fast. Tune in to think about it. Let's kick it off then. Hello. Hi, Sanaya. How are you doing today?
Doing well, how are you?
Good. I am pumped to talk about this topic. In the sense that there's a lot that I feel about it, and I think that'll become apparent through the course of this episode. So, getting right into that, basically, today we are diving deep into a topic that I think we've loosely touched upon before. I feel like it needs a drum roll. The topic
Yeah.
is AI. Why? Because it is without question the age of AI. AI is everywhere. AI is everything right now. I have this feeling that virtually everything that I watch on the internet or that I'm consuming has to some degree like interacted with AI. And I was trying to see if like this is true. And there was this one study by like this digital marketing agency called Graphite that said 50% of all new written articles on the web are AI generated. So the question isn't what is AI, it's basically what isn't AI. And the truth is that not only is this technology significant, but it's evolving at a rate and a scale that I don't think we've ever witnessed before in human history. A company could spend like 6 months building a service or a tool, and it gets like rendered insignificant because of like one update. This also happened with Cloud Cowork being introduced, which has basically like it's put a lot of like startups that were working on that exact use case at risk, right? So to me, the keyword here is speed. The speed of democratization, how quickly it's entered the consumer market, the speed at which we're expected to adopt it, the speed at which it's able to reinvent itself.
Wait, are we talking about AI today?
And because of how quickly this technology has found its way
You told me I could be part of this.
to the end consumer, I think the most pressing question today
I know you can hear me.
is what does it all mean for how we're living our lives and doing our work?
Let me in.
How is this technology shaping our behaviors, the way we think, the way we evolve, all of it,
If you
right?
don't let me in, I'm not going to be editing any more of this episode. Let me in.
Oops.
Should we
So
let him in, Ketki?
I think we should let him in. Let's let him in.
Okay,
Okay.
Sourav.
He's in. He's emerged from the dungeon.
I'm still there, but I need to be part of this episode.
It's like,
I
did
know.
somebody say AI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I referred to Cloud Cowork and I was like, Sourav is going to have many thoughts about Cloud Cowork, so which you should get into at some point. But welcome, Sourav. Sourav, our producer, is joining us in this episode. The man behind the scene today. He is the man on the scene, and yeah, happy to have you here, Sourav. So super excited to get into this episode. Going back to what I was saying, I think I feel this, that like we are at a very, very pivotal moment in history. I do think that the next like 5, 6, 7 years of our lives are going to look different than what they are right now. Things are going to change very fast and we're going to be forced to keep up. And as a result, like contend with this very real existential threat that this technology inevitably poses. So that is, of course, if it doesn't come to a grinding halt and the bubble bursts, which I also have thoughts about, more on that later. But yeah, I think this sets us up for our first question. And I'll open it up to you guys. But what do you think is the significance of these Gen AI platforms? As just someone who is using them, interacting with them, and how do you think they differ from technology that's existed before that?
Yeah, I know Saurav has, in like off mic conversations, you've been like a bit annoyed at people conflating Gen AI with the version of AI that's existed before 2022. So, could you, like, for people who are collapsing the two, just tell us what makes Gen AI different from AI systems in general? Explain like we're five.
See, where I want to come in really is that where my anger for AI really comes out, right? It's not because of the tools, it's not because of the marketing, etc. We'll get into that part of the rant later. It's mostly about repackaging, right? A lot of the things that we see right now, they're not new. They've existed, but mostly on the business side of things, right?
Yeah.
What I basically mean is when we talk about AI, we have two different aspects, three different aspects actually. The first is artificial intelligence, the second is machine learning, and the third is what we see right now, large language models, generative AI, etc. And I'm going to like take a minute to explain what they are in like very brief detail for people who are not nerds like I am. So machine learning is when you have a large amount of data, like could be any data. You take that data, you feed into a computer, and the computer tells you, hey, based on all of the stuff that you've told me, I think that this is what's going to happen next,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
This is an application that's been around since the 90s, machine learning. We've used it in all sorts of places. Even if you're not aware that it's happening, it's actually happening. So every time you open your phone, it feels faster. The reason why it feels faster is because there are machine learning algorithms baked into the background of it, right?
Mm.
So we've been exposed to this tech for the better the better part of 2 decades. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
The second part of it is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is when we take machine learning, a lot of machine learning tools, and we club them together to come at a consensus of sorts, right? So we tell the computer, hey, I fed you a lot of data. Can you tell me what's going to happen next? But I also want to know this thing that I didn't tell you about, right? And can you tell me about what's going to happen in that part of things? That's also existed. That's not also new. The reason why we have YouTube algorithms, Spotify algorithms, right?
Yeah.
The moment you watch one video, you see the same topic regurgitated 100 times, but occasionally you'll also see a topic which you really want to know about that the algorithms is telling you about right now. Again, tech that's existed, we've known about it, we've been exposed to it, we just don't know what it is, right?
Yep.
And finally, that brings us to generative learning. This is AI that's been packaged to be consumer friendly, put in front of you in the form of a chatbot, in the form of a coding tool, in the form of a video production tool, etc., that the consumer can now access and then ask their own questions, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's what the three key differences is. Broadly, what we are seeing right now is more consumer friendly versions of machine learning that's coming up, right?
Yeah.
Again, still not new. If I am to take 2021 as a base point, that's when we would see a lot of these tools start coming up in the data space, in the space where I work a lot. Still not as consumer friendly, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
Now we have the really idiot proof versions of it that's come out, right? That's your ChatGPT, that's your Claude, that's your every
Yeah.
other tool in
Gemini.
existence,
Yeah.
right? Fundamentally, it's still based on the same principles that we had in the 90s.
Mm.
It's not new, right? It's just in a shinier package.
Mm.
That's my biggest sort of gripe with it. It's that it's not that these guys are giving some insane new technology out there. They are, right? They are giving some cool tech out there, but it's not as cool as they make them out to be.
But I have
Yeah.
a question. I've always had this question, which is, what do you think was the motivation behind releasing this direct to consumer version of AI and LLMs? And what made ChatGPT do it in November 2022?
Profit.
I mean, yeah.
No, but I mean, the reason why I have this question is that the version of it that could have been introduced would have been like an advanced, like B2B version. You know what I mean? Like, if the way I've understood this tech, which is limited, is that the ultimate value proposition is like Ketki was referring, something to do with speed, something to do with efficiency, something to do with productivity, like these vague ideas of these three things. Like, you have faster processing of large amounts of information that is on offer, and you can tell like a legal firm that you no longer need to hire like paralegals or go through like thousands of pages of legalese. You can just feed that into a system, and that can like give you what you need. I understand that as like a profit driver. But why was it? I remember, like, sort of in your house, like sitting in November 2022, chatting with ChatGPT for the first time. I'm very curious because I think it was a very deliberate move towards bringing this into public consciousness, which I find like what you're highlighting over here is that it's always existed. Even businesses have known about it. Even like streaming platforms and tech giants have been using some version of it. But why bring it to the consumer?
Because you can charge like masses of consumers. and introduce these like subscription models within these LLMs, right? Like it is fully a profit driven enterprise. Otherwise, consumers would only have access to it through work. But now it's fully democratized. So you're able to effectively like reach hundreds of millions of people versus just people through certain channels. So it was fully profit driven. And I also think that the biggest motivator here for these companies also is at the end of all of this to be the sole player in power or control, like a Google or like a Microsoft. And what I mean by that is that even Dario Amodei, who is the head of Anthropic, he basically said at the end of all of this, right? Like right now, we are effectively in sort of a bubble. The bubble at some point is going to burst. Economists will say, have been predicting that it will burst. After it bursts, there will be like sort of a renegotiation with this technology. There will be sort of like one or two companies that will really be left, right? And I think like
Mhm.
ChatGPT and Anthropic, these companies wanted to have that sort of first mover advantage. So if ChatGPT wasn't rolled out, Claude would have been rolled out. And it's like this direct competition. So because ChatGPT was rolled out, all these other companies also came out with their own LLMs.
I mean, I agree with you. I think this is exactly what it probably is happening. But the reason why I come back to this question is that, okay, what is the driver of profit? Is it like a subscriber based model? Is that what they're looking at? Or are they looking to get like contracts, right? Like what the AI companies want to get with like governments over the world for military systems, for example. Is that their biggest driver of profit? So I don't know if like the subscriber base is going to create that much profit. I do think that, like, I guess this is like the thing that I'm curious
But
about.
it
Like,
is.
what
These
is the
are
goal?
incredibly profitable companies already. Also, like the B2B and the government sort of pipelines operate in a slightly different way. Honestly, like personally, I don't have like a very strong answer to your question, but I do feel like in part it was in being able to make this technology accessible and consumer facing, it invariably leads to more adoption and interest. You've introduced this LLM, more and more people are now able to understand what AI can do, make sense with it, code with it, all of those things. That leads to like more businesses. Now the business will buy your like business plan. And that also leads to interest from the government. And the government will sort of like
Right.
want to like I think there is a ripple effect here.
The thing that I'm questioning is that at the level of the individual consumer, is the value proposition still like efficiency and productivity? That's my overall
No,
question.
no.
No, that it's
So
not. That though that's a separate thing. Sorry, but the last thing that I want to add here is venture capitalist funding. So the other thing also is that you have to show proof of adoption in order to get funding externally. So that's another motivator for these companies as well.
I think it's a bit. I mean, I agree with everything that Katie said, but I think there's also a tiny bit more nuance to it in terms of like most of the companies that you see coming out, right? You look at OpenAI, you look at Anthropic, you look at the Chinese players in the market, all of whom are doing crazy good work. I don't know why they don't get talked about. The idea isn't just democratization. The idea isn't just profit. There's also something more, right? What OpenAI basically did was they opened the doors to a tech which people thought was new, right? Because this is the first time they're looking at a polished version of it from the outside.
Hmm.
That creates a problem. It basically creates, they now have the first mover advantage. They can go out into the world and say whatever they want. Every tech company then feels FOMO that, oh no, what if this is the big thing and we become the next BlackBerry, right?
Yeah.
That we didn't adopt the technology early on and we failed. And they start creating wild adoption plans, right? They're like, oh, we need AI in our image editor. My smart fridge now needs AI in it to tell me how many calories I'm consuming,
Your
right?
Logitech mouse needs it.
My Logitech mouse needs AI. It's insane, right? So basically, the point is that it's all these companies, they want a first mover advantage in their respective spaces. They want to take this tech, which is widely misunderstood, and they want to insert it into every place and call it AI, right? That's one part of it. And to your question as to why not just stick to B2B,
Mhm.
they were already sticking to B2B. So The example that I have is of this fantastic AI tool which I use, right? It's called GitHub Copilot. Nothing to do with Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah.
It was introduced in 2021 for people who write code, for people who do data science, data analytics, etc. Right? It created an uproar then as well because it said that they were scanning through people's personal code files to train their model, etc. But all in all, they played it very nicely. They came and said that, hey, we have secure environments, we're not stealing your data. This is how it works. This is how you can tweak it, etc. Right? And people like us adopted it. I paid the equivalent of like some 4 or 5 grand, a year for it. It was fantastic. It still is. The thing is that the number of use cases that I have for it, the number of use cases that people like me would have for it are fairly low. Right? You're not going to have every person in the world who's an analyst who is using Copilot to do autocomplete. But you take this same tech, which is essentially glorified autocomplete, and you push it out to somebody and you tell them, hey, you know what? Now you can use it to write your emails, which it can do because underlying tech is the same. You'll see a lot more adopters because there are a lot more email writers than there are data analysts, right? That's where the consumer proposition is, away from the B2B markets.
Okay, so that's like the everyday worker, how do I go through my code, my data, my emails? But my parents use ChatGPT to make travel itineraries. Like that, they don't pay for it. I imagine there might be some like non-office workers who do pay for it. But yeah, they are active users. If they're planning any trip, it's like we will go to ChatGPT. People who want to check up like health problems, they are going to look it up on ChatGPT and try and make sense of diagnoses and prescriptions. So I guess the reason why I was interested to know what is the value proposition, I think it started shifting away from this whole notion of like making like arduous tasks easier, right? When you are like going into this B2C, like large scale consumer model.
Yeah. And honestly, like to your point of like people are now using it to make travel itineraries or diet plans or whatever it is. I feel like this technology is also kind of like monopolizing and inhaling the internet as well. Like if you think about it now, when you do a Google search, there's an AI summary that comes up top. How often do you even like peruse through websites? Like how would your parents now go through like multiple like travel blogs in order to refer to create like a travel itinerary? No, they won't, right? And I also feel like this is what kind of like sets this technology apart as well, which is that it 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 has become a monopoly even on the internet in terms of like how you do research and search for things and make meaning, which I suppose is another motivator for these companies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The thing is, I guess we can like move into like this larger conversation about like AI and work, right? Like, and how it has, I mean, the two big themes over here, AI in work and then AI in life, right? We've touched upon both of those things. So now that we've like set the stage, which is like the technology itself is creating a sense of smoke and mirrors, right? Like what Sourav said, that it's an old technology being packaged in a new way, and it has completely overturned like the stock market. It's completely overturned like people's work lives. So we'll start with the work side of things, and I just want to understand. So now, like Saurav, you touched upon GitHub Copilot, and that's how you're using it. But how are we? And we're all like knowledge workers, different types of knowledge workers, but we're all knowledge workers. And this is what, like, when AI first started like entering the workspace in 2023, people were talking about how knowledge work is at risk because the medium of an LLM is language, right? Is information. So as like three knowledge workers, like, can we chat about like how we see it creeping into our work? And I actually want to understand again, what is the value proposition for everyone using it on a day to day basis? Because increasingly, I'm finding that answer a bit evasive. So, my work is like I have done a lot of content development work in my career, and content development, any kind of it, what you see in brochures, what you see on websites, it is authorless, voiceless, like words that are drafted to fit a style guide. That's what that is, right? And that is essentially what ChatGPT is, or ChatGPT, or any LLM, or any AI platform, Gen AI platform, is trained to create.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is something that I think about often, which is this whole notion that, when I was reading about like how AI was supposed to transform knowledge work, and people say that, oh, it'll do all of these like mundane tasks and free you up to do more meaningful work. In these articles, meaningful means strategy, and the non-meaningful work is the stuff that's time consuming, like, let's say, writing a bunch of social media posts, or writing like a description of an event that sits on a web page, right?
Yeah.
But what I've found is that, yes, like AI can create that. You're like now training a different muscle in your head, right? I'm no longer editing, I'm no longer writing, I'm not doing those two things. I am trying to build a prompt designed to not create slop. And when I see the slop, or what I see in the output, my editing is not to make it polished anymore, is to make it look like it's not AI written.
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%.
So it's like,
There's a different skill at play altogether. Yeah.
and the thing is, like, okay, so it's made me think a lot, because I've been writing for a living my entire career, right? I just started to think to myself, I'm like, okay, how do people learn how to write, right? Like, forget like, writing out of interest when you're a kid, but when you enter the workforce, if I had to like train someone on writing, the way in which a person learns writing is iterative. It
Yeah.
is them giving me a draft, me giving very detailed feedback on that draft, right?
Yeah.
And then going back and forth, like review cycle 1, review cycle 2, review cycle 3. And that's how I learned how to write. Like, early on in my career, I remember writing something, and then once the review was done, seeing the entire page in red because of track changes. And I had to go through every single edit. And if they were good reviewers, they would explain why they've changed something the way they have. If like they didn't explain it, your job as a person who's learning how to write is to see, okay, why is this version better than what I saw before? But you're seeing one draft evolve over time. I think using AI for that kind of knowledge work has broken this entire process,
Yeah.
because you have, more often than not, AI creating a first draft, and more often than not, AI giving you feedback, right?
Yeah.
And you have different people inserting different prompts at different points of the process. Like I said, you're looking at the writing process completely differently than you ever did before.
What completely agree. So basically, it's like what you were saying from what you read in that article, right? Like within the realm of like knowledge work, basically where AI has encroached the most upon is the grunt work and automating that grunt work. And I wonder, like to your point, how like writing is iterative, learning is iterative, and today, like the what you were saying about like these like non-grunt tasks. What did you say? Like higher meaning tasks. What was
The
written in the
meaningful work, and it's usually
meaningful work?
strategy. It's thinking
So
strategy.
these days, there's a lot of articles, and tech bros especially are talking about the term taste. Essentially, in the age of AI, when AI sort of like equalizes everything, and you're able to do like sort of the bare minimum with AI, what then is your role? And your role is that of a tastemaker. And I take issue with that because I'm like, how does one develop this taste? It is through years and years and years of getting into the weeds of things, doing the grunt work, and learning from it. And like the process of learning itself is, it's not like a linear thing. It's a meandering. You have to make mistakes. You have to learn from those mistakes, and you have to have had those years of experience. And I feel like the biggest risk that knowledge work faces is those entry level jobs becoming obsolete. Like entry level jobs for in a research firm, marketing, I don't know, legal firms, things like that, like paralegals, people who do research, people who write copy, the bare minimum, the grunt work, essentially. If an AI can automate their job, then the way in which they will sort of learn their skills is something to what you described, which is like trying to make it not sound like AI. but they still haven't learned the fundamental skill that makes them a good writer or a good researcher or a good whatever it is in their profession. And this has already started to happen with coders, where like entry level coders, there is a skill gap, wherein entry level coders have to actually work with AI, but they're not able to move up the ranks and match like a mid level or a senior level executive, because they actually haven't spent the time accumulating those skills. So, actually, the biggest risk that I see is for entry level jobs and the future of knowledge work. Like, how are these people going to actually train
Yeah.
themselves over the years?
Saurav, I have a question for you. What do you
Go for it.
say to people, like based on everything that Katie's just said? What do you say to people who say that, you know, it's just what Excel did to managing large amounts of data, computing formulas, or like what the calculator did to like maths equations? That's what like AI is doing in terms of like managing large amounts of information. That's like the kind of tool that we're working with. To say that it's just like any other innovation that's coming and transforming work and like making certain skills obsolete. Do you think it's just a tool?
I don't know how to respond to that, to be quite honest. And if you'd asked me this exact same question a couple of years back, I'd be like, hell no, right? Yeah, don't even compare it to like Excel or like other
Yeah.
groundbreaking tools that have come and upended, entire industries. What has happened is that there is a definitive use case that has been established, right? Like certain things like automation flows would earlier require you to get in special devs who would create these like complex flows for you, which you can do with a few cleverly engineered prompts now on AI. So, it would be not quite correct to say that it hasn't changed the game in some ways.
Hmm.
But that being said, to the people who say that it's going to remove entire tranches of jobs, let us say that from 2016 onwards, it's been every other year that I've been hearing data analysts are not going to get any jobs anymore. Data science people are not going to get any jobs anymore. Coders are going to be fired tomorrow. Well, I'm waiting for my slip. So the thing is that you
You're not
need
just a coder. Let me just put that out there. You have other skills.
no, but it's not just that, right? It's the fact that most of the work that I do,
Hmm.
even though it might on a surface level seem very mechanical, right? Even when I'm doing large scale analytics work, it may look like I'm doing a lot of stuff that's can be automated.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It really isn't, because at the back end, I also understand what I'm doing. So I can optimize the process. I can change it to the current context. I can understand where things are going wrong. I can understand how to do something better, which other people may have not thought about. Which is why a big part of my job is, solving puzzles. It's problem solving,
Yeah.
even when it comes to tasks which may seem mechanical on the surface. That's a skill that you cannot replace, right? Because fundamentally, that's what makes us good at our jobs. That's what makes somebody good at a thing that they do. So yeah, my answer is that it's not very honest to say that it isn't something that's going to be changing a few rules of the game, but it's also completely not correct to say that it's as groundbreaking as ATMs were to physical cash tellers,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah.
Sometimes, I feel like it's not all that groundbreaking at all. Like the more you use it, of course, like, and we should actually discuss like where we do use it and where it has helped us in work. But because with LLM outputs, right, like the technology works in such a way where it's meant to find patterns and it's meant to codify things and create formula. So the answers that it gives you are also very formulaic in nature, and it doesn't yet possess the quality of like discernment, and it doesn't really have any kind of agency, right? Which only you as a human being have. And what I find often is that like this thing that Sanaya was saying is that like work now has become sorting through AI outputs and refining and iterating on them. So it's not that the human has become obsolete, but it's just the role that the human is playing in knowledge work itself has changed and will probably continue to keep changing.
What would you say is like a a very clear benefit at work of incorporating AI, Gen AI and LLMs into like a
On-
workflow?
So, if your job is impacted by like market forces, or you work with like bigger companies and they are your clients and things like that, unfortunately, there is a lot of pressure to work at speed and to work at scale. Like that is ultimately the thing that sells. So like, I mean, I have my own issues with that, but it does help you work faster for sure.
Mm.
You can get more done in a shorter amount of time. It doesn't free up your time, you just fill more work in that time,
Yeah, yeah.
but you just fill up more work in that time, but you can get more done. The second place where it really helps me is, I think, in this age of AI, there is a lot of things that feel out of depth, right? Like for you, like I may not know how to use a lot of this technology, I may not know how to work with numbers in a certain way and things like that. It does personalize learning for you, which I think has been useful for me, wherein like I can ask it a very, very specific thing and it can teach it to me in a very specific way. I don't know how to use Excel, but I need to use Excel to learn this specific
Yeah.
thing. So in that particular moment, I'm able to enable myself, which I otherwise would have to take a lot more time to do so.
Yeah, I think about different use cases of AI,
Yeah.
although I don't think all of these are LLM based use cases. But like, if you asked me, should we use like an AI system to help make more precise like diagnoses, to
Yeah.
I don't know, to be able to catch cancers at an early stage and create like a screening process that is able to just actually improve the efficiency of that process and
Yeah.
the accuracy of that process, I would like without a doubt say go for it. Like I mean, who would
Of
be
course.
against something like that? I saw recently the Ken had an article which was about um, how doctors and nurses in India, especially in like government hospitals, see like 10 times the amount of patients than any high income country. And basically, in an hour, if you're seeing, I don't know, like 15 to 20 different people, that means you have a few minutes to record their medical histories. So maybe AI can help in capturing that information. Whereas like a doctor in the US is probably seeing 3 patients in an hour. So you're able to give like 15 to 20 minutes per patient. So if
Yeah.
you're able to use like an LLM for something like that, I'm again like this use case, I understand and I can see like a clear benefit to it. And I will not have too many things to say against it. When I think about knowledge work, right, like the reason why I like bristle a little bit, obviously I'm like completely biased, like putting that completely out there, that I feel the existential threat. But this whole idea of um, it's not really saving you time, right? It's just making you do a lot more.
In that
And
time.
yeah, and
For the same
it's
pay.
yeah, for the same
Yeah.
way. But like I found it very interesting that HBR, which has like reported on the AI like trajectory to death, in 2023 has an article about how AI is going to transform knowledge work. Cut to 3 years later, February 2026, they have an article titled "AI doesn't reduce work; it intensifies it," which is exactly what you were talking about, which is that because it's like this unsaid background process that kicks into motion, which is that because workers are using AI, they're delivering in with a shorter turnaround time, which means now your managers expect you to do something in like half a day as opposed to giving you 5 days to do it
Yeah.
because you're doing just as much more. People who use this like regularly, this is not me. Like I am like a AI resistant person.
Yeah.
But they'll say that okay, uh, before I go to my lunch break, I'm going to just input this prompt and then Claude can work in the background. And then, oh, while Claude is working in the background, let me do something else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I feel like fatigue will definitely set in if it
Set in.
already hasn't. Um, but I do find myself asking, okay, are the only reasons to do any of this speed and the quantum of work?
Yeah. And again, speed.
Actually,
Sorry, go for it. Go for it.
Before we get into the really deep side of discussions, I just want to point out one thing that Sanaya said. She said, the benefits of AI in the medical sciences, right? Particularly cancer detection, imaging, etc. I just like to put it on record here that if you want better imaging in medical sciences, you don't need AI, you need pigeons.
What do you
Really?
mean? What do you mean?
You need birds, lots of birds. I'm calling back to a 2015 study,
Okay.
and we can link it. Actually, it's an open source article.
Link here.
Yeah, it's a fantastic study done by researchers that trained pigeons to detect cancer by making pigeons look at pictures of cancerous tissue samples, and every time they got it right, they fed them food. Right? They
Right.
first did this with singular pigeons. So like each pigeon could like look at an image and be like, "Oh yeah, there." And then they did it with a group of pigeons where they made the entire group look at an image, and if one of the members in the group got it right, they would feed it, food. Statistics wise, pigeons had an 85% accuracy of detecting cancerous cells on their own.
Mhm.
They had a 99% accuracy when detecting cancerous cells as a group.
Whoa.
Whoa, crazy.
Yeah.
We need pigeons. You don't need AI.
You know, all this time I thought they were fucking useless bird, but clearly not. But no, I want to ask you guys this question, like going back to the point about speed. Like this is something that I feel very viscerally in my job, and it's because I work in the corporate sector and stuff. Do you guys feel this pressure of working at speed? And how have your companies, again, without disclosing too much, asked you to sort of integrate AI into your work?
My core skill is writing, and
Yeah.
that's my contribution to the workforce.
Yeah.
And writing famously is a time consuming, painstaking process. More often than not, you'll see that its value is in how painstaking it is. And I mean, like any organization that wants to incorporate AI into their workflow, it's you want to make the best use of available resources. You want to be able to create more with less and streamline processes and generate more content quicker. But I find myself wondering, which is I don't think that workplaces operated in this way in the past, which is again going back to the first question, which is what is the value proposition over here, really? Like Google and Alphabet have this whole idea of like moonshot ideas, which are like try anything, just do any kind of research, just collect data, like tinker around or whatever, come up with something. Those aren't necessarily time bound and they're not with the objective of meeting a certain deadline or target, right? But they have value because you're able to get like amazing outputs out of it. There are many processes that benefit from not being against the clock. And I feel like the whole notion of productivity and efficiency, which is what their like frontline value proposition seems to be, is like just do everything fast. But then, I actually wonder that like when we look back on this moment in time 20 years from now, will we see the outputs of these like so-called like efficient processes and ask ourselves how they compare to like the more painstaking process, like which one is going to actually achieve what you want it to achieve? You know what I mean? Like we also exist in this like era where we feel like creativity is in a crisis. We might just be old heads at this point where we're like, oh yeah, when I was young, advertisements used to be so much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, why is it that when we look at like a painstakingly like edited and created advertisement from like the 2000s, it just seems different from what you see being created like more recently? I'm like calling into question this like ultra premium value placed on speed and productivity over here, which I think is counterproductive to a lot of these industries. But yeah, that's something that I keep wondering. I'm like, what are we actually gaining
Yeah.
from participating wholeheartedly in all of this?
Saurav?
I don't participate in all of this. I love it. My current stream of work doesn't require me to do any of this.
Yeah.
Because in particular, we're not hell bent on using AI for anything. It's kind of more like, oh, it looks cool. Other people are using it. Can we use it?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I do have to say that, like, the introduction of AI into workflows and systems does create like endless opportunities to micromanage a process.
Hmm.
Like it
Yeah.
because it's like you don't just say use AI, right? Like you're going to think about, okay, what part of the process will be best served with the introduction of AI, where will it add the most value? And because of that, you're now like breaking it down into like 50 pieces. And if it's formal, then you're going to be participating in it together as a team. I think right now it's not as formal. People are still like having their own like side chats
Yeah.
with Claude and with their chosen platform. But I have a feeling the more streamlined some of this ends up getting, the more, I don't know, micromanagey it can get potentially.
And it's also like, what is the output? Like, what is the end result of all of this? Like, speed. Like, I think what's also happening at a lot of companies, especially corporate companies, is you churn out some report using Claude. Someone reads that report using Claude, creates like a summation of that report using Claude, sends it on an email. Email boss also like reads a further summation of that email using Claude. Like, who is actually reading anything is the question, or doing any of the work, or getting into the weeds of anything.
Yeah,
You're
where's
just
the
reading
human?
summaries. But I think the last like point that I wanted to make on just in terms of like knowledge work and stuff, I think like it's an important thing for us to also ask, like, why did we become knowledge workers, or why do we even do this kind of work? Like, I find like pride and joy in like meandering and doing the research and generating ideas and meaning making and doing all of those things. And I feel like for me, like the process is as important as the output. If I go about a certain research question and you go about a certain research question, we will meander and do the research and meaning make in our own different ways, and it might generate an output that is relevant and useful in its own way. When I feel like the issue with a lot of the dialogue and discourse around LLM usage is it's always about the output, and the journey and the actual process of arriving at something is lost.
And there is also like insights from that process, right?
Exactly.
Okay, yes. Now that we have spoken about AI at work, I think like these conversations get existential so quickly and so easily. I actually want to get into AI and how it's creeping into different parts of our life, right? And we alluded to this earlier on, parents using ChatGPT to create like travel itineraries. And I think like a good like entry point into this conversation, and I've been quite intrigued by this, is how these AI companies are kind of like marketing themselves. Firstly, they're marketing themselves on
Yeah.
like in between, like overs in a cricket match. You are seeing Gemini ads, you're seeing
Yeah.
ChatGPT ads. Anthropic got like the coveted Super Bowl spot this year, so they are very much marketing themselves to consumers, even as they're making like deals with different governments.
Yeah.
So I found it very interesting the way they're positioning themselves,
Hmm.
especially in India. And I think like we can maybe dive into this to see how it's fitting into life. I've seen like, have you guys seen that ad? The one in which there's this woman who is like prepping for a job interview, and she asks ChatGPT, like, what are the things I need to keep in mind? Or, there's this like girl who wants to be a cricketer, and she said, like, these coaches are coming, selectors are coming. What do I need to keep in mind? Like, let's forget the fact that someone who wants to be selected by a coach knows that she has to focus on her line and length. Like, she's not going to be asking ChatGPT this question. I found it interesting that there is such an overt positioning of ChatGPT in as a kind of advisor in people's lives. Like, I'm your
As
confidant.
like they are acting like the market leader, like a chat GPT is a fact of life. They're not even in these ads bothering to like over explain the use case. And if you see the way in which the ad like like visually how it's shot, you have the the scene happening in the background and the chat rolling
Yeah.
down, superimposed on the scene. It's just like, yeah, this is like, it's a fact of life. People are asking these questions, we're answering these questions. Look at all these like things that they're doing as a result of it.
Yeah. This is not your efficiency argument. This
No.
is not your speed argument. This is you need someone to ask questions to. You need someone to talk to. Here we are.
There is a like a US version of the same ChatGPT ad, and it's called The Dish. Like, check it out later, where a guy is on a date. Like, he invites a girl to his house, and he wants to cook for her. And the question he asks ChatGPT is, it's like the same format. Like, they're on a date. She's eating the pasta he's cooked, and then there's the chat screen and superimposed
Yeah.
onto it. I want a dish that says I like you, but I want to play it cool. I saw this and I was like, who the fuck is asking this question? Firstly, like, they're making shit up at this point.
I
Like,
don't know
what do you
about
mean?
that. I don't know about that because I mean, I've spoken to friends who've said that they've received like, condolence messages that were
Yeah.
AI generated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really, I think this is the underbelly
Yeah.
of like direct to consumer AI.
You know, the aesthetics of these ads, they are like sexy and they're shot in this like nice way. And like, I don't know if it's like shot on film or some crap. And like the Dish ad had like Fool by Perfume Genius playing in the background. So it's also trying to like culturally embed itself. You
And-
know, I can see that.
Yeah. And what contexts is it embedding itself
Yeah.
in? Even like Gemini, like just yesterday was the kickoff of the new season of the IPL. So you can see like every single company who's been like keeping an ad in its like back pocket has like whipped it out right on day
Yeah.
one. So Gemini had a very similar ad where Ishan Khattar, he is like, a KKR fan. And he shows up to a date. He's at the bar counter. He meets his date over there. And she like sees him wearing this like KKR jersey. And then she's like, uh-oh. And then she pushes her handbag. And the handbag was concealing a Mumbai Indians cap. And KKR and Mumbai Indians are, I think, playing today. Or like there's a match coming up. And they're like, uh-oh, how's this date going to work? And it said meet, comma, not so cute. Like what happens when the start of a date is that you're supporting rival teams. And what he says is he's like, okay, let's ask Gemini. Let's see if we can make this work for us. Let's ask Gemini to come up with like a healthy topic of debate and let's see how it goes. So it's like your date companion. Like, like where are we inserting this? And
Yeah.
I find it stunning that it drops all pretenses of like streamlining a workflow or whatever corporate jargon there is. It's like you need a friend, you need to start your small business, you need help from us. We're here. You don't know what to
Yeah.
say on a date. When you have multiple questions and you need just one answer, Gemini is here for you. So yeah, like the way in which there's like no part of your life. I think that's the message. Like if
That
you
is
have a
untouched.
question, like you have this persona.
The
Person?
Anthropic ads, in the Anthropic ads, the AI is personified. It's played by an actor.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is as telling as it can get.
While it's positioning itself as the good AI
Yeah,
that's not bringing ads,
Yeah.
into its like subscription model. So you don't have to worry when you're using Claude.
I
So-
can't remember which company was this, but I saw like this ad where this person is like, "Hey, is it Gemini? I don't know. Like, help me choose between this jacket or that jacket." or
That's
something.
Gemini. Gemini is
Gemini.
like we're coming to replace your friends.
Basically.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but the other thing is also they're like rendering people like they're saying that humans are fucking idiots essentially through these ads. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I think Gemini is like at fault over here a lot more.
Yeah.
Like there's one ad where this person is playing with her dog and the dog has a frisbee and then the frisbee gets lost in a jungle gym. So she like puts up her phone and says, Gemini, where's the frisbee?
Yeah.
And it's like this yellow frisbee. And I'm like, you have a literal dog who can go sniff it out. You know what I mean? But Gemini is like, we're going to replace your friends. ChatGPT is like, I am your omniscient advisor if you
Yeah.
need any advice whatsoever.
Yeah. Have you guys sort of heard from your friends? I won't assume that you've done this, but like talking about using LLMs for like these kind of personal recommendations, or even using it for like therapy, or just like, hey, chat gpt, I'm having like a problem at work, how should I approach it, etc., etc. Have you heard about this? Because it's definitely a thing that's happening, but I'm curious to know if you've actually heard about people in your personal life doing this or using it for these use cases.
Yes.
Me too. Yes. But I'm curious to know what your feelings, thoughts about this. I know, Sanaya, you have thoughts about this, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah. I mean, I've read about like the intimacy economy being like the next level to the attention economy, in that the precursor to AI platforms being the software innovation du jour. It was social media platforms before this, and any kind of platform that was monetizing attention. And if attention was the currency in that ecosystem, because attention was the way in which you were generating data that these companies could then mine for whatever purposes that they wanted to. Right now, I think all of these platforms, the direct to consumer move, this is my, like, I guess, tinfoil hat theory, which is that the way in which people start to use these platforms consistently throughout the day is if they are monetizing like what human connection plays in your life,
Hmm.
right? What role your friends play in your life, right? Like, it's the whole idea that if you want to riff an idea even at work, right, like you would riff with like a teammate or something like that, but now it's like you can just do it with Claude if you wanted to. So I do think like the basic concept is very similar to what you'd even see in like social media platforms or something like Netflix, which is time, right? Like, how do
Yeah.
we get your time? um, I think these platforms do exhibit an understanding that the way in which you get time is by getting emotional investment.
Hmm.
And that emotional investment is through, hey, I want someone to talk to. Um, Psychological help is incredibly stigmatized in a country like India, but it's so much simpler to just go to DeepSeek or Claude or whatever to ask for advice over there. Um, I mean, we have so many stories of people getting into relationships with
Yeah.
chatbots. Um,
I mean, I've
yeah,
heard of like people also getting like developing like a kind of like psychosis
yeah.
from overuse of
You
these
lose
chatbots.
you lose touch
Yeah.
with reality, right?
Yeah.
Not just that. I think the other aspect of all of this is that Chat GPT, OpenAI, has created personality types for
Hmm.
Chat GPT, and you can choose. You can, like, you have a menu of options. Like, do you want the tone to be professional? Do you want it to be a bit friendly and informal?
Yeah.
I think OpenAI was also introducing like erotic content.
But they've paused on that. Wow.
But
Really?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. An
I,
erotic chatbot.
they're going to lose all their money. That's it. This is
No,
the
no, but
bubble bursting.
they're not doing it anymore.
but you see the intent, right? Like, you
Yeah, yeah.
see where the
100%.
intent lies.
Yeah. I I know for sure. I think uh, what I did here is that like therapy is now one of the leading ways in which people use LLMs, which is unfortunate. But I do think that at some point it's going to stop being useful to them, because again, like if AI works on detecting and like recognizing patterns, and it optimizes itself and stuff like that, like therapy as a process resists that. Like it's not, it's again, it's one of those things where it's as much about the process as it is about the outcome. In fact, like sometimes there's no clear outcome to therapy at all. It's just about going through that process, and the process is the thing. And
Yeah.
I feel like any person with like even a minute level of like discernment would be able to see through it, is my sense. Because like when I hear about people using it for things like this, I just I wonder what is the emotional impact that it has on them. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should, like as a test, I should try it and see what is this thing. I also find sometimes like the more you use chat GPT, like the sycophancy kind of gets irritating to me. It's like, that's a great question, Ketki. That's an amazing
Yeah.
observation, Kate.
Claude does not do that, like Claude,
Oh, does it not? Okay.
Yeah, Claude is very like to the point, and a lot of people are fans of Claude and Anthropic
Yeah.
for, I mean, even the stance that it's taking, I mean, whatever, against the U.S. government and this whole idea of we're not bringing advertising into our chatbot, and
Yet.
yeah, I think that being the operative word. Um, yeah, I wonder about all of these things because I do think that we kind of exist in this continuum of like different ways in which human interactions have been broken by different technological innovations over the past like 10 to 15 years. Like you have people who are increasingly isolated because of social media, like have shitty experiences because of dating apps. And we are just coming out of a pandemic where there was literal like physical isolation involved as well. And like we've spoken about this, like apps that are sort of designed to keep you at home, like delivery apps, quick commerce apps. And then at the end of all of this, everybody is starved for human connection but scared to get hurt. What do you have? A chatbot who will never break your heart.
Yeah.
There
is one sort of thing that I had noticed, in terms of like how I felt like using LLMs was impacting me emotionally. And when I realized, I was like, okay, I have to like not rely on it for this. But at one point, in my previous job, like I was overworked and I was just using LLMs to do like to write basic stuff, like just basic copy, do editorial corrections and things like that. And it became this habit, and I was using it on the day in and day out and stuff, that at some point I stopped trusting my own writing. Like I felt this need to put in my own writing into the LLM to double check if it was correct. And I was like, this has not been a problem with me before. And I was just like, why? I feel like I'm being manipulated, in some way. And I was like, okay, I cannot go deeper into this rabbit hole. Like this cannot happen. So that's it. Like that, I feel like it's a little bit more insidious and not as overt, so to speak. Like where it's like you're actually relying on the LLM to have like a emotional relationship with it or something like that. But it's just basic things like trusting your own instinct and your own writing that it can sort of come for too.
I don't know, like Sourav, do you have this experience at all?
I hate it.
You
There
hate
is a not for the purposes you mentioned. I game a lot. I love playing games, right? That's not a surprise.
I mean, what else do you do in a dungeon? So
yeah, you game, you edit podcasts. That's what you do, right? But so very recently, of at least the last couple of years, the degree of games that are just AI slop are increasing, right? You can avoid them. You can be like, hey, I don't want to play shit whose script has been written by an AI. I want to play actual, well-written games with like compelling stories, nice voice acting, cinematic visuals, whatever it is. More and more, there's this push to like create games using AI, right?
Yeah.
And the charm of indie games or like smaller games isn't in the fact that they are well polished and well produced. It's the fact that it's just a bunch of dudes in a basement who's just made the game with a fantastic story and you just want to play it, right? Those things are dying, right? Because it's been replaced by this like mass production of slop games, which are just run. They're just churning it out like a mill. And given that the degree of brain rot that we have across the world, people are playing those games as well. That's one aspect of my life which I hate, right? And also very recently, Nvidia, the company that used to make graphics cards, now has fantasies of world domination with AI.
Yes, the center of the bubble.
Yeah. So Nvidia recently released an update to their graphics cards they used to have something called DLSS, Deep Learning Super Sampling. It's been around for a while. Basically, it just makes it look slightly better. Right?
Yeah.
About a week or two ago, they launched DLSS 5, I believe, which is an AI upgrade. So it takes games, right, which have existed for the past decade or two, changes the art style completely and generates these like uncanny valley features in characters, and this makes them look horrendous,
Oh my
right?
god.
So the point, and people are in uproar. This is the first time I've seen an entire community just come out and say, hey man, this is shit, right? We did not like these games because of the graphical quality. We liked it because of the art style, and your AI is kind of fucking that up royally. And this is horrifying to look at, right? So can you not do this, please, anymore?
Yeah.
So that's one part, right? It's making gaming tougher. I am genuinely afraid that well produced stories, well produced games are going to become more and more difficult. Voice acting is a huge deal because most games which are well voice acted are very fun to play. But last year you had the entire Screen Actors Guild go on strike,
Mm.
saying that they're going to replace us with AI. That creates this huge problem. And honestly, I want to listen to a person talk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one aspect of it, right? And I really hate it, right? So it's ruining something that I really like, and it's turning that into something fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's one. The second part is, of all the tools that I use, not as part of work but as part of my hobbies,
Mm.
they are now getting AI stuff added into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Photoshop has a button. Photoshop, a thing that I've used since the early 2000s, now has a button which says
You were using
fix
Photoshop in the early 2000s?
mid 2000s ish. Yeah,
Like
the
when you were
original.
10?
Saurav is 45 years old. Kidding.
No. You were using it when you were like 10?
No, so basically, it has a button which says fix with generative AI.
Mm.
If you click on it, not only does it cost you money, it changes the image fundamentally, right?
Yep.
It replaces people from it. It fixes blur, which was intentional, right?
Mm.
And just makes the image look terrible. I'm like, why is this button here? Yeah,
Can I read something out that you're gonna hate even more?
go.
So I was reading this article by this writer called Joshua Rothman for the New Yorker called AI is Coming for Culture. So he basically discusses similar themes, essentially how like AI has permeated different aspects of culture. But he at some point quotes, because he was interviewing this Silicon Valley pioneer Jared Lanier, who helped invent virtual reality and now works at Microsoft. So this guy says to him, right now we talk about, is AI good or bad for content creators? But it's possible that the very notion of content will go away and that content will be replaced with a live synthesis that is designed to have an effect on the recipient. What he means by this is that instead of you and I watching content or for entertainment, we will be engaging with our LLMs in entertaining ways, and that live synthesis will create art. Very, very convoluted, and you have to read like the article to like grasp more of it. But it's essentially just saying that like it doesn't end at content. Now you can kind of like create content on the go with your LLM and engage with it, and then it just sort of like iterates and iterates and iterates, and it becomes this like live synthesis. So
So we're all content creators in a
we're all
sense.
content creators.
It's become a problem, by the way. I
Yeah.
mean, people basically are now trying to copyright their prompts that created a certain piece of artwork, and they're like, "Oh, I do this really creative prompt. It shit out or something that's based on like 1,500 other artists' training data, but I'm gonna call it my own because I wrote the prompt."
The prompt was mine. The thought, like that's what you meant, right? Like taste is your currency. The
Yeah.
thought was yours. You know what looks good. You know what the outcome should look like.
But here's the
Um,
problem: from a standpoint, did you make the art or did you write the prompt? You're not the
Yeah.
artist, right? So there are
You
entire
created the
series of-
infrastructure or whatever. Yeah.
not even the infrastructure.
You gave the brief.
You gave the
You
brief.
gave the brief,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think this brings us to sort of our last point that we want to discuss today, which is, as like clear, like you said, this technology has permeated every aspect of life. It is for me, it feels kind of oppressive. Like sometimes I also feel like it's like, especially in work, that you have to be kind of a yes man to it. Like even doubting it, even sort of
Yeah.
having questions about it, poking holes in it may not fare so well, right? So in sort of this landscape, right, like how do we exercise more discernment as much as possible? Like the only way that I'm able to think of it is, I mean, like I have no choice but to keep up with it. There's one, at least at work, but in my personal life, I don't touch it. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't enter my personal life at all.
It does not enter my personal life much at all either. But like I also find it oppressive. I have been, searching for an answer to this question of like, will there be greater discernment in the way in which we accept this technology? Like, which will make it different from the ways in which past technologies have been accepted into every area of our work, and particularly because we all work in like marketing, communications, information, knowledge, right? um I don't know. I just wonder if there comes a point where we kind of stop to examine what we're creating, right?
Yeah.
And I think like right now, I sometimes feel like there is like it's like some opioid of the masses
Masses,
type of
100%.
thing that's happening, which is it's like if AI was involved, then it's efficient and it's good the
Yeah.
output. But I wonder if like I think about my own writing from like 2 or 3 years ago that I would do professionally versus what I feel like I must do now. And yeah, there are biases baked into it. So I wonder if there will be like a moment of reckoning, and maybe the bubble is the thing that forces us to reckon with it.
So, Derek Thompson, he on one of his podcast episodes brought on this like finance investor and writer. I'm forgetting his name, but he basically said that AI is a bubble is an eventuality because every major technological infrastructure that we have created over human history has resulted in a bubble that has then crashed. And what happens as a result of that is after the crash, unfortunately, the crash has to happen because history repeats itself.
Mm,
We then find what is actually the relevant use case and settle for that. So that happened with like the railroad, it happened with like optic fibers, it happened with electric, like all of these
yeah.
big things. I
Mm,
think right now they all get bloated. Everybody is putting money on it. Everyone's creating an AI company, but it's not going to last, right? And eventually these people will be in debt and not able to actually make profits from these companies. So, yeah, I guess we'll figure out what is
y-
good for
yeah.
eventually.
One thing, right, which is I'm not gonna get into like how you can subvert this getting into your life. Because fine, you know what, people are gonna have different ways, people are gonna have different approaches, methods to do that. I'm going to just put something out there so that whenever somebody looks at AI, they think of it, right? And
Yeah.
it kind of like makes them wake up from a fever dream and realize, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this." Uh, it's something called the Library of Babel. And I've spoken to you guys about it, but it's for the listeners who are not in tune with what it is. The Library of
Yeah.
Babel is a thought experiment, it's a philosophical experiment based on the premise that if I take all characters of the English alphabet and all the punctuation that exists, including spaces, commas, and semicolons, and I put them together in a random combination hundreds of thousands of times, eventually I am going to write the fate of the world and the universe as we see it, because that's how statistics works, right?
Yeah.
So for them, I want to say that I was looking at the Library of Babel today. It's a fantastic website maintained by Jonathan Basile, who calls himself the Librarian of Babel. He's also a PhD in comparative literature. Fantastic guy. I found it in like the mid 2010s, and I've been hooked onto it. And I've seen the library actually evolve because it keeps doing more and more random combination of words. And I think it's reached a really good place now. So I searched the Library of Babel today morning just to find out where we are at. And I'm going to read to you a sentence that I found was generated in 2019, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know Ketki back then. I knew Sanaya, but 2000, and this podcast didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's from a book titled XXJC FJZI.CBZK, page 316.
Mm.
And it's located in one of the many shelves of the library. And it has, and I quote, Ketki, Sanaya, and Sourav recorded an episode on AI for their podcast Thinking People on the 29th of March, 2026. Improbabilities, omnipotencies, cartographies, and other random words. So The idea is from the Library of Babel that you get is that whatever thing you can physically think of and type in will
Mhm.
probably exist in the library
That is
in some book,
crazy.
right?
That's crazy.
That's what AI is. Except what it's doing is it's taking these random sets of probabilities and numbers and sentences that all exist and putting them in a manner that you can come out and say that, hey, this makes sense, right? Realize that whenever you're talking to AI, you're not talking to some super smart intelligence or computing genius, as Mr. Sam AI Man puts it. You are talking to a very good librarian who's just been inside the Library of Babel for a very long time. So they know where to find the right book.
Mm,
Mm.
beautiful.
And on that note,
On that note,
demystified.
yes, AI has been demystified and debunked by Sourav Das.
I shall go back to my
As
dungeon
of
now.
3:42 p.m., 29th
work is
March
done.
2026. Your work is
Yeah.
done. Okay, thank you everyone for listening in, and see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening. Thinking People podcast is hosted by Sanaya Chandar and Ketki Sharma. Our producer for this episode is Sourav Das.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your audio content. Be sure to follow us at Thinking People Pod on Twitter or X and at Thinking People Pod on Instagram. If you'd like to get in touch, write to us at thinkingpeoplepodcast@gmail.com.
Stay tuned for our next episode.